Okay, guys, I want to use this to explain some premises that are needed to understand the allegories of the Bible more clearly. You see, one of the errors, aberration of man is that we look to the outside world for definitions. We look to the outside world, to the activities of the outside world to derive meaning for our lives, instead of just realizing that the meaning of life is its own self. Life is its own meaning. So the first premise is this: God is all there is. There is no God on the right who created you on the left, sitting down on the throne somewhere, waiting on the judgment day. There is no God on the right who created the heavens and the earth. God is all there is. Nothing else exists outside of God. Now, in your experience, you notice things that don't look like God. We know that it doesn't look like God because we have a sort of definition of what God is. We say that God is omnipresence, omniscience, omnipotent, is formless. That definition is not in the Christian word. God, people don't think God is formless. They think he's one guy with, you know, a guy my style of God is actually formless. Now, if there's anything you are seeing in your experience that does not look like this, then that is an illusion. It doesn't exist. It's just there for a while. It will go soon. Anything that comes and goes is an illusion, doesn't exist. Second premise is that the Spirit of God is what moves things. If you even notice my head shaking and my mouth moving, it is the Spirit of God moving it, not this little me. The Spirit of God is what moves things. Now, the error of man is that we have identified ourselves with the stories in our head. We have assumed that it is the me that is creating these stories. Somebody did something yesterday to me, so today I remember it and I replay it in my mind. And I assume that it is me doing this movement. It's a movement, but I have assumed that it is me making the movement to happen. So in that case, you throw away the spirit, the power of the spirit, and you replace it with your own self. So when you realize that the Spirit of God is what moves all things, then you don't need to identify with your own personal thoughts. You don't need to identify with them because it is not you who is moving them. And to have this as a direct experience, to have this as a direct experience, you need to know God. In order for you to see the Spirit that is moving the things, you need to know who God is. And for you to know who God is, you have to be still. Be still and know that I am God. In your stillness, you stop identifying with the thoughts that comes through your head, that goes through your head rather. And you are still, when you spend your time more in stillness, then you will notice that a movement is going on at the background, independent of you, but going on intelligently. When you notice this movement, in this noticing of the movement, you will notice the stillness that you are. And that stillness is God. So the first premise, God is all there is. Second premise, the Spirit of God moves all things, not you. You don't move anything. When you take a cup from your table and take it to the kitchen, you have not done anything. It is the Spirit of God that gives power to move all that stuff. So when you have these two premises and we go back to define the Bible, then we cannot look for anything outside to for for our own definitions. We can't say there was this guy in some thousands of years ago who did this. No. If God is all there is, then there is no time. There is no yesterday, today, or tomorrow. There is just God. And then from this premise, you define you define without bringing yourself into the picture. What if if God is all there is, then all definitions must be ascribed to that God and not to anybody outside of it, including yourself. All right.